Right, hey folks, so strength standards for hypertrophy. How strong do you need to be to look jacked? This is the FazLifts edition. So let me talk you through it now. Firstly, before that, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you are here, any comments and likes would be appreciated, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. So let's crack on with the video. Now, I do have some notes for this one because there's a bit more to be said. So firstly, a stronger muscle is in general a bigger muscle under some conditions. So the first condition is you've got to be doing that for a reasonable rep range, okay? Moderate to high reps, you know? I generally tend to favor 6 to 15 reps as a nice range, okay? Now, also, rep speed has to be fairly moderate as well, so you shouldn't just be slamming it back and forth. It should be controlled, and I would say something like 2 or 3 seconds down on the negative and about 1 second up is about right, okay? Now, so there's got to be a good pace to the routine, really steady. Other thing I would say is the form's got to be good. So you've got to be using at least a reasonable range of motion, not bouncing the bar off your chest, not doing half squats, you know, not bouncing the bar off the floor when you're doing deadlifts. It's got to be reasonable. It's got to look good. It's got to be like, okay, think of it like this as a practical way of looking at it. If I was to walk into your gym and watch you lift, you would be proud of the way you were lifting. Think about it like that, right? So next time you're doing a set, just think, what would FazLift say? Yeah, what would Faz say? That's the level of form you want. You want to be proud of your lifting. And when anyone's watching you, you want to be proud of your lifting. That's the first caveat, okay? All right, so next up, here are some like golden rules for hypertrophy. So just to sort of summarize those with a bit more detail. So firstly, reps should generally be in that like 5 or 6 to 15 range, with the majority being in 8 to 12 range. Strength should be pushed incrementally. So the idea is that week by week or month by month, you should be adding 2.5 kilos, 5 pounds. That's the idea, or at least aiming for that. This is not to say that next time you train, you go out and just shove on 20 kilos and get your mate to help you with the bar, and that's like, great, Faz, I got stronger. No, strength, like muscle, is built incrementally. So build your strength alongside your muscle and vice versa. Third rule is master the weight before you add more. Master the weight. You don't always have to add weight to the bar to improve. You can just get better at using the same weight and the same reps, okay? The reps can be smoother. You can have more control. They can be slower. Yeah, so you can more approximate that 2 or 3 seconds down, 1 second up. Like if it was a bit scrappy before, clean it up a little bit before you move on. You don't always have to go on just because you managed to survive the set. So alongside that, don't add more weight if you've not earned it. Always push to add more if you have mastered the weight, and always perform the reps with excellent speed and control. All right, next up, here we have the actual goals, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here, but I'll talk you through it anyway. So for men, a regular squats parallel, about 150 kilos for 8 reps. So that's about 330 pounds. Bent leg deadlift, 180 kilos for 8. So that is about 400 pounds for 8. Stiff leg deadlift from the floor, about 140 for 8. A few guys in the States, it's about 300 pounds for 8. The bench press, about 110 kilo for 8. And that would be about 245 pounds for 8. The parallel bar dip, so the weighted dip, it's your body weight plus 40 kilos for 8. So that would be roughly like 90 pounds, I think, something like that, plus your body weight for a set of 8. Overhead press, about 80 kilos for 8. It's a very strong number. That may need to be done seated, but it should be done strict. And that's like 180 pounds, something like that. One arm dumbbell row, 50 kilos for 8, about 110. Now, I would say with that, what I'm talking about here is a strict version of a one arm dumbbell row. I'm not talking about a heavy version of a one arm row. I'm talking about it being as strict as you would with the rest of your lift. So I don't practice that much on heavy one-arm dumbbell rows. I just think they should be as strict as everything else. So nice and braced, pulling into the waistline, pulling your elbows nice and high, having strict control, not using body momentum to shove it up there. That's my personal preference. Barbell curl, about 50 kilos for 8, or like 110 pounds. So those would be good lifts done in good form, with good tempo, and also assuming you're doing a reasonable amount of total volume for the rest of the body. Those lifts would make you look noticeable, assuming you're also lean as well. So like doing those lifts at, I don't know, if you're very overweight, like 50 pounds overweight, it's not going to look the same as if you're doing them and you look between a genuine 10 to 20% body fat. It's going to look very, very different. So those are goals for somebody who's relatively lean, sustainably lean, not talking shredded, but sustainably lean, and then you will look impressive doing those lifts. Now, next up, I don't want to forget about the women. So in general, with regards to women, for the most part, women should be able to reach about 75% of strength of similarly trained men, okay? Upper bodies might end up being a little bit less, okay? Now, that's not to impose limits on anyone, but these are just generalities that I've seen. So that would mean a regular squat to parallel of 110 kilos for 10. It's a substantial figure, 110 for 10, 110 for 8, sorry, is roughly 240 pounds for 8. Bent leg deadlift about 135 kilos for 8, which is about just under 300 pounds. Stiff leg deadlift from the floor, about 100 for 8. That would be about 220. Bench press about 70 for 8, which is roughly about 155 pounds for 8. Parallel bar dip, which is body weight plus 20 kilos for 8. That is about 45 pounds. Overhead press, roughly 50 kilos for 8, or about 110 pounds. One arm row, about 30 kilos for 8, or what is that, about 70 pounds, 66 pounds. And barbell curl, about 30 for 8, that is also about 66 pounds. These, again, similar to the men's lifts, they are to be done in good form, good controlled cadence, and these lifts with a reasonable body fat percentage would set you apart in any gym in the country. So a bit of a final word on this. Firstly, where are these standards coming from? Now, for those of you who are familiar with strength standards of all kinds, they all mostly come from the similar kind of place, and that is roughly the 3-plate aside bench, 4-plate aside squat, 5-plate aside deadlift standards, which have been there since, I don't know, the 1940s, I think, going back to sort of Charles Heiss and stuff like that, like back in the day, almost 100 years ago at this point. So they're fairly universal standards, and I think some of it was based off powerlifting numbers as well. So it just helped solidify what we expect. So we see for an average sized guy, roughly those lifts are about where we start to separate the very, very talented from the average talented. So if you attend any regional powerlifting meet, good numbers will look a little bit like that for 1 rep maxes. So the whole 3, 4, 5 at a reasonable body fat percentage. And those are just simply rep equivalents of the 3, 4, 5. So that's where these numbers come from originally. Now, since we're doing them for hypertrophy, you want to basically have equivalencies for sets of 8, and then you want to make sure the form is correct and everything looks good. And for the women's standards, it's roughly 75% of, which is what I've seen to be about right, considering the same sort of level of body weight and all that kind of stuff. Now, let's discuss body weight before I close out this video. I think with regards to body weight, if you are very under sort of weight, so let's say you're 150 pounds, okay, and perhaps you're short. I've been asked about this before, and I think there was one guy who took my comments completely out of turn in my last video about when I did this with Steve. And body weight does matter, but the point is, you're aiming to be stronger. So the point is, you're supposed to add body weight on. You're supposed to add muscle on. That's what we're training for. So it's not like you're 150 pounds and you're going to do these lifts at 150 pounds. This is a hypertrophy standard. You're supposed to get bigger. So you're going to get bigger. Like if you're 5'5", then you're probably not going to be a shredded 180 or 190 pounds, right? That's obvious, but you will be getting a little bit bigger and getting a little bit more muscular. So yeah, body weight matters, but it doesn't matter as much as you think, because the goal is you're going to get bigger. That's what we're here for, isn't it? So I thought that was insane, but yeah, so strength standards do differ for, body weight standards do differ for height. I don't think strength standards differ though. Even if you're 5'5", you should still be able to hit those lifts. If you're 6'2", you should be able to hit those lifts. Frankly, if you're 5'5", you'll probably be able to hit those lifts even easier. But the point is, you've got to put some muscle on your frame. A guy who's 6'2", 6'6", he's going to have the type of leverages, which means he's going to have to put on so much more weight to actually lift those numbers in reasonable form. Either way, you're going to have to get jacked. So height matters in the sense that it's going to affect your overall body weight that you manage to lift these weights at. The shorter you are, the lighter the body weight. The taller you are, the heavier the body weight you'll need, because you just need more muscularity, okay, for the equivalent look at, say, a guy who's 5'5" compared to a guy who's 6'5". So you should still be aiming for the same strength standards. It is literally stupid when people say, like, yeah, you should aim for lower weight standards because you're 5'5". No, some of the strongest athletes in the world are 5'5". The only reason that nowadays you get stronger guys in the taller weight, in the heavier weight categories, is because they're taller and they can safely have more body weight on their frames. So, like Hathor Bjornsson, for example, he's 400 pounds. Show me a guy who's 400 pounds and 5'5". You don't see it in the competitive ranks. You don't see it. Why? Because you can't pack on that amount of muscle on that frame. But you do get guys like Eddie, who, well, while he's not that short, he's like 6'1". He's shorter and he's just as big a size. But as you go down in height, you're going to get guys who are lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter, simply because it's a case of pounds per inch. So yes, height matters, but the end goal is still to get more jacked. So I just wanted to add that as an addendum, if my comments have been misconstrued in previous videos. Bottom line is, guys, for you as an individual, those standards that I've laid out in this video, they're good goals. If you do those at a reasonable body fat percentage, you will be nice and jacked. It will produce results. And for the women, I've laid out the figures there as well. All right, folks, hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that cleared up any confusion about the whole body weight and height thing. Don't let your height limit you. And if anything, the shorter guys should be lifting a hell of a lot more. It's a thing. All right, guys, I'll call it.